The morning Daniel Reeves lost his job began with a scream. "Please, don't leave me here," the old woman whispered from inside the broken-down sedan, her hands trembling on the steering wheel as traffic roared past her like an angry river. Daniel had been on his way to work, already late. His boss, Mr. Harrison, had warned him twice this month. One more mistake, and he'd be gone. But when Daniel saw the frail woman struggling to push her car alone on the shoulder of the highway, something inside him refused to keep driving. He pulled over. The woman introduced herself as Margaret Collins. Her voice shook as she explained she was trying to get to the hospital to see her sister, who had just been admitted after a stroke. Her car had overheated, and she had no idea what to do. She didn't have much money either. Her late husband had handled everything mechanical. Since his passing, she'd been navigating the world alone. Daniel lifted the hood and immediately saw the problem: a ruptured hose and a failing radiator cap. A simple fix. He checked his watch. He was already 40 minutes late. He hesitated. Then he smiled gently at Margaret. "Don't worry, ma'am, I'll take care of it." He used spare parts he kept in his truck, working quickly but carefully. Grease stained his uniform and sweat trickled down his forehead under the rising sun. Margaret tried to hand him the only cash she had, a few crumpled bills from her purse. Daniel shook his head. "Keep it, use it for your sister." Tears filled her eyes. "Young man, there aren't many like you left." He thought nothing of it. He was just raised that way. But when Daniel finally arrived at Harrison Auto Repair, the storm was waiting. Mr. Gregory Harrison stood at the entrance, arms crossed tightly across his expensive tailored jacket. The man valued money more than mercy and discipline more than kindness. "You're late again, Daniel." "I'm sorry, sir. A woman was stranded on the highway. I don't pay you to be a hero." Daniel tried to explain, but before he could finish, Harrison's face darkened further when he noticed the missing parts from the shop inventory. "You used company supplies, without permission." It was a small fix she couldn't afford. "Enough!" Harrison barked loud enough for the other mechanics to stop working. "You think this is a charity? You cost me money today." The word stung more than the dismissal that followed. "You're fired." Just like that, 10 years of loyal service ended in a single sentence. Daniel walked out carrying a small box of his tools, heart heavy but conscience clear. At home, his wife, Rebecca, listened quietly as he explained everything. Their 2 children, Caleb and Hannah, sat at the kitchen table doing homework, unaware of the financial storm approaching. Rebecca reached for his hand. "We'll manage. God sees what you did." But faith didn't pay bills. Within weeks, their savings thinned. Daniel applied everywhere, but jobs were scarce. Some shops had already heard Harrison's version of the story, that Daniel was irresponsible and misused company property. The rejection letters piled up. One evening, as Daniel sat on the porch staring at the sunset, doubt crept in. Had he been foolish? Should he have just driven past Margaret that morning? Then his phone rang. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar but professional. "Is this Daniel Reeves?" "Yes." "This is Thomas Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Automotive Holdings." Daniel nearly laughed. Whitmore Automotive owned several major repair chains across the state, including Harrison Auto Repair. "I've been trying to reach you," Thomas continued. "I'd like to meet." Confused but curious, Daniel agreed. The next morning, he walked into the sleek headquarters building, feeling out of place in his modest clothes. He was escorted to a large office overlooking the city skyline. And then he saw her. Margaret Collins sat beside Thomas Whitmore. Daniel's heart skipped. Margaret smiled warmly. "I told you he wouldn't recognize me in a better outfit." Thomas stood and extended his hand. "Margaret is my aunt." Daniel froze. Thomas explained that Margaret had indeed been on her way to the hospital that day. Her sister had survived. But when Margaret told her nephew about the young mechanic who fixed her car for free and refused payment, Thomas was deeply moved. Margaret had insisted on visiting Harrison Auto Repair later to thank Daniel properly, only to discover he had been fired for helping her. Thomas's expression hardened. "I reviewed the reports. Mr. Harrison terminated you over less than $50 worth of parts." Daniel lowered his eyes. "It was my choice, sir. I don't regret it." "That's exactly why you're here." Thomas slid a folder across the desk. "I need someone to lead a new community outreach division, free roadside assistance for seniors and low-income families. Someone who understands compassion over profit." Daniel's breath caught. "It comes with a regional manager title," Thomas added, "and a significant salary increase." Tears blurred Daniel's vision. Margaret reached across and squeezed his hand again. "Kindness always finds its way home, dear." Meanwhile, back at Harrison Auto Repair, Gregory Harrison received a different kind of call. Corporate had reviewed his leadership practices. Complaints about harsh treatment and profit-driven shortcuts had been mounting for months. Within days, Harrison was removed from his position. Daniel didn't celebrate the man's downfall. He simply focused on building something better. Under Daniel's leadership, the outreach program flourished. Mechanics volunteered weekends to help stranded drivers. Young apprentices learned that integrity mattered more than income. Word spread quickly about Whitmore Automotive's new initiative. Business didn't suffer, it grew. Customers trusted a company that valued humanity. Months later, Daniel stood in front of a group of new hires, sharing his story. He told them about the morning on the highway, the fear of losing everything, and the miracle that followed. "But this isn't about miracles," he said softly. "It's about choices. You can choose to protect your paycheck, or you can choose to protect someone's dignity. One pays you today, the other pays you forever." At the back of the room, Margaret sat proudly beside Thomas. Daniel's children, Caleb and Hannah, would one day hear that story and understand what true wealth meant. Because sometimes, losing a job is the first step toward finding your purpose. And sometimes, helping a stranger on the side of the road isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning.